In a quiet corner of the galaxy, the planet Lyra thrived under the glow of twin suns. Its inhabitants, the Lyrithians, were a diminutive species known for their delicate frames and vibrant, bioluminescent skin. Among them was Eyla, a young and curious soul who stood just over 4 feet tall, a stature considered perfectly normal among her kind. Yet, to her, it was a source of endless frustration. Eyla's world had changed since the humans arrived. They had come decades ago, seeking refuge after a cataclysm rendered parts of their homeworld uninhabitable. The Lyrithians welcomed them, offering shelter and trade. Over time, bonds formed, cultures intertwined, and stories were shared. But for Eyla, one story stood out, a tale whispered among her people about the union of Lyrithians and humans. It wasn't unheard of, though rare. The idea of such a pairing intrigued her, yet also filled her with a deep unease. How could someone as small and fragile as her ever connect with the towering, broad-shouldered humans who walked among them? The humans were so different, so strong, so imposing. Eyla often found herself wandering the bustling trade markets of Lyritha's capital city, her eyes drawn to the humans. One human in particular had captured her attention. Kael, a skilled engineer who worked on integrating human technology with Lyrithian systems. Kael was kind, with a gentle smile that seemed to ease the tensions between their species wherever he went. Yet, when he spoke to Eyla, her nerves tangled into knots. "Hey, Eyla," Kael greeted one day, crouching slightly to meet her gaze. "I could use your help. You know these systems better than anyone." Ayla's bioluminescent markings flickered faintly, betraying her flustered state. "Me? Oh, I suppose I could. What do you need?" Kael gestured to a console, its sleek Lyrithian design interwoven with human modifications. "The calibration's off. I've been at it for hours, and I can't figure out what's wrong." Eyla stepped closer, her small hands moving deftly over the console. As she worked, she couldn't help but notice the way Kael's presence filled the space around her. His quiet focus, the warmth of his voice, it all made her feel both comforted and painfully aware of her own insecurities. "You're amazing at this," Kael said, breaking her thoughts. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Ayla's markings flickered brighter, a reflexive display of embarrassment. "It's nothing, really. Just practice." But as Kael stood and stretched, towering over her, Ayla's insecurities surged. How could she ever bridge the gap between them? She was too small, too delicate, too different. That evening, Eyla confided in her closest friend, a Lyrithian elder named Lyra. The elder listened patiently, her own markings glowing softly in the dim light of their shared dwelling. "Eyla," Lyra said gently, "do you believe your worth is measured by your size?" "No," Eyla admitted, though her voice wavered. "But Kael is human. He's strong, and I'm just—" "A Lyrithian," Lyra interrupted. "A being of light and resilience. Do you think Kael cares about the size of your frame? Or does he care about the strength of your heart?" Eyla fell silent, the elder's words settling over her like a comforting blanket. Yet, doubt lingered. In the days that followed, Eyla found herself spending more time with Kael. They worked together on various projects, their partnership growing stronger with each success. Kael's admiration for her brilliance was evident, and slowly, Eyla began to see herself through his eyes, not as someone small and inadequate, but as someone capable and valued. One evening, as they sat overlooking the glowing forests of Lyrith, Kael turned to her. "You know, I've always felt a bit out of place here," he admitted. "But working with you, it feels like I belong." Ayla's markings pulsed softly, a sign of her growing confidence. "I used to think I was too small to make a difference," she said. "But maybe it's not about size. Maybe it's about connection." Kael smiled, his gaze warm and unwavering. "You're not small to me, Eyla. You're everything." For the first time, Eyla felt the weight of her insecurities lift. In that moment, she realized that love wasn't about physical compatibility or perceived inadequacies. It was about understanding, respect, and the bond that bridged their differences. The glow of the twin moons bathed the forest in soft light as Eyla and Kael sat in silence, the hum of nocturnal creatures filling the air. For Eyla, it felt like the first time she could breathe freely in Kael's presence. His words lingered in her mind. "You're not small to me. You're everything." But with the warmth of that moment came an undercurrent of uncertainty. The world around them was vast, and their connection, though profound, existed in the delicate space between two entirely different species. The following days brought more opportunities for Eyla and Kael to work together. The project they had taken on, a communication hub that would allow seamless dialogue between Lyrithian and human colonies, was a feat of engineering and diplomacy. Eyla's understanding of her people's technology was unparalleled, while Kael's ingenuity brought human innovation to the table. They worked long hours side by side, often laughing over mistakes or marveling at breakthroughs. Despite their growing comfort, Eyla couldn't entirely silence the doubts that occasionally crept into her mind. What would others think of them? Did Kael see their partnership as more than professional? One day, as they fine-tuned the hub's crystal array, Kael spoke up. "Eyla," he began, his tone unusually serious. "Have you noticed how people stare at us when we're out together?" Eyla froze for a moment, her markings dimming. Yes, I've noticed." Kael sighed, leaning back against the console. "It's not all bad. Some are curious, some skeptical. But there's this one question I keep hearing, and I guess I want to hear your thoughts on it." "What question?" Eyla asked cautiously. He hesitated, then met her gaze. "People wonder if we could ever really work, you and me. Not as colleagues, but as something more." Eyla's breath caught. She'd feared this moment, yet here it was, unavoidable and raw. "And what do you think?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kael smiled softly, his expression earnest. "I think I've never met anyone like you. I think you challenge me, inspire me. And honestly, I don't care what anyone else thinks. What matters is what you feel." Her markings pulsed faintly as she processed his words. The idea of admitting her feelings terrified her, yet she couldn't deny them. I care about you, Kael. More than I ever thought possible. But," she paused, struggling to find the right words. "What if I'm not enough? I'm so small compared to you, so fragile. I worry I'd only ever disappoint you." Kael leaned closer, his voice gentle. "Eyla, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Strength isn't about size, it's about resilience, about heart. And you have more of that than anyone I know." Tears welled in Eyla's eyes, though she fought to keep them at bay. For so long, she had let her insecurities define her, but here was someone who saw beyond them, who saw her. Their confession marked the beginning of something neither had fully expected. Their partnership deepened, no longer just in work but in life. Yet, their newfound relationship was not without challenges. Whispers spread through the colony, some supportive, others critical. Among the Lyrithians, there was concern about Eyla's well-being. The elders, while not openly opposed, questioned the physical and emotional compatibility of such a union. "Humans are different, Eyla," one elder warned. "Their strength, their needs, it's not like ours. Are you certain this path is right for you?" Eyla stood her ground. "Kael respects me. He doesn't see me as weak or incapable, and I won't let others decide what's best for me." On the human side, Kael faced his own share of skepticism. Some of his colleagues doubted the practicality of his relationship with Eyla, suggesting that the differences between their species were too great to overcome. But Kael was unwavering. "Eyla isn't just another Lyrithian," he told them. "She's brilliant, compassionate, and stronger than most people I know, human or otherwise. If you can't see that, then you don't know her like I do." The turning point came during a crisis that threatened both their peoples. A rogue asteroid had veered dangerously close to Lyrith, its trajectory set to collide with a critical agricultural zone that fed both species. The human ships were powerful but needed the Lyrithians' precise navigation systems to alter the asteroid's course. Eyla and Kael volunteered to lead the effort. Together, they worked tirelessly, combining their knowledge and rallying teams from both species. As the deadline approached, tensions ran high. Some doubted their ability to succeed, but neither Eyla nor Kael wavered. When the moment came, their combined plan worked flawlessly. The asteroid was diverted, and disaster was averted. The success was a testament to their partnership, silencing many of their critics. In the aftermath, Eyla and Kael found themselves hailed as heroes. Their relationship, once a subject of doubt, became a symbol of unity between their peoples. One evening, as they stood together overlooking the now thriving agricultural zone, Kael took Eyla's hand. "You've proven everyone wrong, you know," he said, his tone teasing but full of pride. Eyla smiled, her markings glowing brightly. "Maybe. But I didn't do it alone." Kael chuckled. "No, but you were the heart of it all." As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Eyla felt a quiet certainty settle within her. She had spent so long doubting herself, questioning her worth, but now she knew the truth. Her size, her differences, they were not weaknesses. They were part of what made her unique, part of what had drawn Kael to her in the first place. And as they stood together, their hands intertwined, Eyla realized she no longer cared about what others thought. She was enough, more than enough. And with Kael by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the months passed, Eyla and Kael's bond deepened, their partnership becoming a cornerstone of the growing alliance between humans and Lyrithians. The success of their asteroid diversion mission had set a precedent, not just for cooperation, but for understanding and mutual respect. Yet, life was far from simple. The quiet murmurs of disapproval from both species still lingered in certain circles, and the complexities of their relationship continued to challenge them in ways they hadn't anticipated. One challenge arose during a celebratory gathering. The humans and Lyrithians had organized a festival to commemorate their alliance, complete with shared meals, music, and storytelling. Eyla and Kael attended together, their presence drawing curious glances from both sides. The festival was lively, with humans introducing the Lyrithians to their rich and hearty cuisine, while the Lyrithians shared delicacies made from the luminous fruits of their forests. Eyla eagerly offered Kael a piece of Veronique fruit, its glowing pulp a favorite treat among her kind. "You'll love it," she said, her markings glowing softly with excitement. "It's sweet, with just a hint of spice." Kael bit into the fruit, his eyes widening. "Wow, that's intense. But good." He grinned, earning a laugh from Eyla. As the evening progressed, the pair found themselves drawn to a dance floor where Lyrithians twirled gracefully alongside humans. Eyla hesitated at the edge of the crowd, watching the fluid movements of her people juxtaposed with the humans' more grounded steps. "Come on," Kael said, extending a hand. "Dance with me." Eyla's markings flickered uncertainly. I'm not sure I can. The way humans dance, it's so different. And I'm so small." Kael interjected, his tone light but firm. "That doesn't matter. Just follow my lead." Taking his hand, Eyla allowed herself to be guided onto the floor. At first, she felt awkward, her petite frame moving alongside Kael's much larger one. But as they found a rhythm, her insecurities began to fade. Kael matched her movements, careful and deliberate, and soon, their differences felt less like obstacles and more like a harmonious contrast. Around them, the crowd began to take notice. Some watched with curiosity, others with quiet approval. A few even joined in, inspired by the unlikely pair's determination to bridge their differences. By the end of the dance, Eyla's markings were glowing brightly, a testament to her joy. Despite moments of triumph like these, Eyla and Kael faced more personal challenges as well. One evening, as they worked late in the engineering lab, Kael brought up a subject that had been weighing on his mind. "Eyla," he began, his tone hesitant, "have you ever thought about the future? About what it might look like for us?" Eyla paused, her hands stilling over a console. "The future," she echoed. "You mean us, together?" Kael nodded. "Yeah. I've been thinking about it a lot. About what it means to be with someone who's, well, from a different species. Things like how we'd live, what kind of life we'd build. Even whether we could ever have a family." Eyla's markings dimmed as she considered his words. "I've thought about it," she admitted. "And I won't lie, it scares me. There's so much we don't know, so many unknowns. But," she looked up at him, her gaze steady, "I also know that I care about you more than anything. And I think we can figure it out. Together." Kael smiled, his expression softening. "I like the sound of that. The opportunity to address some of their uncertainties came unexpectedly. A team of human and Lyrithian scientists had begun studying the compatibility between their species, not just biologically but culturally and emotionally. When the team approached Eyla and Kael to participate in their research, the pair hesitated at first, unsure of what the implications might be. But ultimately, they agreed, recognizing the importance of their relationship as a symbol of unity. The research was rigorous, involving medical examinations, cultural interviews, and even simulations of potential living arrangements. While some of the results were encouraging, highlighting shared values and complementary traits, others raised difficult questions. For example, while Lyrithians and humans could technically produce offspring through advanced genetic engineering, the process was complex and fraught with ethical considerations. It's not impossible, one scientist explained, but it would require significant intervention. It's something you'd both need to think about very carefully. Eyla and Kael spent long nights discussing the findings, their conversations filled with both hope and doubt. At one point, Eyla confessed her deepest fear. What if I can't give you the kind of future you deserve, Kael? What if I'm not enough? Kael took her hands in his voice steady. Eyla, you're my future. Whatever that looks like, we'll face it together. I don't need anything more than what we already have. Their commitment was tested once more when tensions arose between the two species. A misunderstanding over resource allocation led to a heated debate in the council chambers, with some humans accusing the Lyrithians of favoritism and vice versa. The conflict threatened to undo much of the progress that had been made. Eyla and Kael, respected voices on both sides, stepped forward to mediate. Drawing on their personal experiences, they spoke about the importance of trust and collaboration, about how their differences had strengthened rather than weakened their bond. Their words resonated, reminding both species of the value of their alliance. In the years that followed, Eyla and Kael became a cornerstone of the growing human Lyrithian society. Their relationship, once questioned and scrutinized, became a beacon of hope and possibility. Though they continued to face challenges, they met each one with resilience and love, proving that even the greatest differences could be overcome. One evening, as they stood together under the twin moons, Eyla rested her head against Kael's arm, her markings glowing softly. "Do you still think I'm too small?" she asked teasingly. Kael chuckled, wrapping an arm around her. "Not even a little. You're the biggest part of my life, Eyla." And under the starlit sky, with the hum of their intertwined worlds around them, Eyla finally felt at peace. She was enough, always had been, always would be. The alliance between Lyrithians and humans had not only survived but thrived, creating a flourishing society where cooperation became the foundation of progress. Over the years, Eyla and Kael had become a celebrated couple, a symbol of unity and perseverance. Their love, which had once been doubted by so many, had stood the test of time. Yet, even as their bond deepened, challenges arose that would test them in ways they hadn't anticipated. It began with a conversation under the twin moons, their favorite place to reflect and dream. The soft hum of the luminous forest surrounded them as Eyla rested her head against Kael's shoulder. "Kael," she said softly, her markings flickering with uncertainty. "Do you ever think about what it would be like to have a family? A child of our own?" Kael turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "I do," he admitted. "I've thought about it a lot. But I know it wouldn't be easy, for us or for them." The topic was complicated. While scientific advancements had made it possible for Lyrithians and humans to conceive children through genetic engineering, the process was still experimental. Beyond the technical challenges, there were societal ones. A child born of both species would embody the hopes and fears of their entire community. "I just wonder," Eyla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Would they feel like they belonged to either world? Or would they feel caught between them?" Kael took her hand in his grip warm and steady. "If we choose this, we'll make sure they know they belong to us. And to a world that's better because we're in it." Eyla smiled, the glow of her markings brightening. "Then let's find out what's possible." Raising Lyra was not without its struggles. As she grew, her unique traits made her stand out in both human and Lyrithian communities. Some admired her, seeing her as the future of their society, while others treated her with suspicion. "Why do they look at me like that?" Lyra asked one day, her bioluminescence dimming in sadness. Eyla knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Because you're special, my star. You're a reminder that the world is changing, and not everyone knows how to accept change. But you're also a reminder of what's possible when we work together." Kael crouched beside them, his voice kind but firm. "And anyone who can't see how amazing you are? They're the ones missing out." Lyra nodded, her confidence slowly returning. Together, Eyla and Kael made sure their daughter grew up knowing she was loved and valued, no matter what the world thought. As Lyra grew, she found her own voice and purpose, becoming an advocate for interspecies collaboration. Her presence at council meetings and community gatherings inspired others to push past their fears and embrace the possibilities of unity. Through her, Eyla and Kael saw the legacy of their love, a world that was stronger because of their differences, not in spite of them. One evening, as they watched Lyra lead a delegation of humans and Lyrithians into a newly built council chamber, Kael turned to Eyla. "We did it," he said, pride shining in his eyes. "We proved everyone wrong." Eyla smiled, resting her head against his arm. "We didn't just prove them wrong. We showed them what's possible." Decades later, the story of Eyla and Kael became legend, a tale passed down through generations as a reminder of the power of love and understanding. Their names were etched into the histories of both species, their legacy living on in the thriving world they helped create. In the quiet twilight of their lives, Eyla and Kael sat together under the twin moons, their hands intertwined. "I used to think I was too small," Eyla said, her voice soft with reminiscence. "Too different. But you never saw me that way." Kael smiled, his grip on her hand firm and reassuring. "You weren't small, Eyla. You were always bigger than the doubts, bigger than the fears. You were my light." As the stars sparkled above them and the sounds of a united world filled the air, Eyla and Kael knew they had created something timeless, a love that transcended boundaries, and a future where differences were not a barrier, but a strength. And so, they sat beneath the glowing skies, their hearts full, their journey complete. The decision wasn't made lightly. Eyla and Kael consulted with scientists, spiritual leaders, and elders from both species. The process was long and grueling, involving months of genetic adjustments and monitoring. At times, the uncertainty was almost unbearable. But after years of effort, their dream became reality. Eyla carried their child, a miracle that symbolized the blending of two worlds. When the time came, the birth was celebrated as a monumental event. Their child, a daughter named Lyra, was unlike anything either species had seen. She possessed Eyla's luminous skin, with a soft, bioluminescent glow, but her features reflected Kael's human strength and resilience. Lyra became a living bridge between their species, a tangible reminder that differences could unite rather than divide.